Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Tatami Room, episode 17, In the Classroom. This is your host, Martin, speaking. I hope you all have had a good week, and I want to thank you for listening and tuning into this week's episode. So this week, I'll be talking about in the classroom, what goes on in the classroom specifically. So what I thought is I would fill you in on some specific games and activities that I like to do, and just kind of go more in depth on what one of my classes looks like. I think I've kind of described sort of what a day at work looks like for me, but I think I've only just touched on something like, oh, I go to class, I do this in class, finish, and this episode I really want to just show you all, or tell you all rather, what goes on inside one of my classes, some games, activities, etc. The Stoic quote for this week is from Zeno, who's actually the founder of Stoic philosophy. Better to trip with the feet than with the tongue. So I thought that was a funny quote. I hope you all enjoyed as well. The current events for this week, yes, I do have a current event this week that I'm excited to share with you all, is going to be about ospreys. And no, not ospreys the birds, nor is it about Osprey, the clothing brand. I believe there's a clothing brand named Osprey. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Okay. No, but the ospreys that I'm going to be talking about are the U.S. military ospreys. So I'll be delving into that after the daily life section. I wanted to also just have a quick little check-in in terms of just update you all on how I'm doing personally. I had a great weekend, a very eventful weekend. I played volleyball Friday evening with some teachers that I work with. I've never played volleyball before, except in like middle school, I believe, when we'd have like a volleyball unit. But so very new to the sport, but I've been getting along. It's been a lot of fun. I honestly just really enjoy hanging out with my teachers and getting to know them on a personal level, and getting to know not just their work selves. So it's been quite a bit of fun. I really enjoy going. So that was Friday evening. On Saturday, I attended a Gakushu Happyokai, which is basically a presentation of the work that students have done so far in the year. And this was at Iseki Shogako, so Iseki Elementary School. And so during this presentation, you have the parents and relatives and friends and family there, and I think a couple of representatives from the Board of Education, including myself, were present as well. But it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed the kids' performance. In particular, one of the third and fourth graders, so every class had a little demonstration, and it went for like first and second graders, third and fourth graders, and fifth and sixth graders. But the third and fourth graders did a recap of, they showed a little snippet of what they had learned in each of their classes. So they had like Japanese class, they had a science class, and they had English class as well. And obviously my favorite part was the English class, because that's kind of where I'm involved. And it was really funny because one of the kids whose name starts with an O became Oton Sensei, which my name in Japanese changes to Maton. So, he became Oton, and kind of played the role of the ALT, or the English-speaking teacher, and it was quite funny to see them perform, and they did a great job. So that was plenty fun. And then Sunday, I had a chance to make it down to the Tanegashima Uchu Center, which is the Tanegashima Space Center located down in Minamitane. I've been there once or twice, but this time I actually got to explore it quite a little bit more, and that was a really cool experience, I should say. I also went to a restaurant while I was in Minamitane, which is like I said, the town in the south of the island. I went to this restaurant where I had the best okonomiyaki I've had in my life. Okonomiyaki is a really good Japanese street food. Usually it's savory. I don't know if there's a sweet variety. The ones I've had have always been savory, but this time, so I went with my coworker, and he apparently I don't know who came up with this, but he says that if you put bananas into okonomiyaki, so this sweet fruit into the savory dish, it kind of becomes really good and really tasty. So we bought some Tanegashima bananas. Yes, there's bananas that grow on the island here. They're kind of small, cute little bananas. But we brought them to the store, or the restaurant rather, and we handed them to the cooks. And apparently there's like a special or secret menu or whatever. But if you ask them, they will put the banana into the okonomiyaki for you. So we did that, and yeah, hands down, best okonomiyaki I've ever tasted. And yeah, I don't know, it's a little surprising when my coworker told me about his plans for the banana okonomiyaki. I was a little surprised too. I don't think even many Japanese people know that kind of trick or that kind of modification of the okonomiyaki. So if you're listening in Japan, you might be as baffled as I was when I learned that bananas and okonomiyaki work well together. But yeah, it was a lot of fun, and the food was great. So if you're ever in Japan and trying okonomiyaki, then I recommend bringing your own banana or looking up the menu, see if they have a secret banana okonomiyaki as well, because I really enjoyed it. But yeah, with that being said, let's get right into the daily life section. Alright, welcome to the daily life section. Well, daily life, but I'm going to be talking about my experience within the classroom, specifically describing one class in particular that I kind of like to do. And yeah, so let's get started. This class, I don't do it every time. Not all my classes look like this, but I think it's a pretty representative class that I would have. And just kind of as a sidebar, this is a class that I would typically do with a smaller school that has about 8 students in that grade level. And speaking of grade level, elementary school, 3rd, 4th, 5th graders are kind of ideal for this class. The class should be, for me, the class is 45 minutes. So I feel like you can make it a longer class, or depending on how much, if you're teaching, you want to try this out. I don't know how much time other teachers have to work with. I feel like 45 minutes per period is kind of standard, but yeah, that's how much I had to work with. In any case, so I always start with a warm-up / greeting, or they call it aisatsu in Japanese. And that takes about 5 minutes. I'll say hello, or hello everyone, and then they have to say, okay, hello Mr. Martin, or Maton Sensei. I let them say whichever one. Honestly, I don't mind. Although I think Maton Sensei sounds more natural to me because I've been a black belt in judo for a while now, so I think I've gotten used to my name and sensei being put together. But it feels weird to hear Mr. Martin. I feel like I haven't I haven't gotten used to that yet. Yeah, I was in high school just a little over 3 years ago, which is kind of crazy to think about. But yeah, so they say my name, and if there's the primary teacher present, then they'll say, and Miss Nantoka Nantoka. So yeah, there's the hello. I'll also ask, how are you? I'm happy, I'm whatever, a bunch of answers. And I'll also kind of ask around, because usually one person will say it, and you only hear like one answer out of like the 5 or 6 people that actually said something. So then I'll go, oh, okay, so just raise your hand if you're feeling hungry or if you're tired, just to kind of get everyone to participate a little bit more and kind of get a better feel for how the class is doing. And the next are the day and date, which the kids frequently confuse day and date. It's really, I think it's hard for them to hear that ending difference. But yeah, first I always go with the day, and then, like, it's Friday, it's Monday, that kind of vibe. And I have also taken to asking them the spelling. I think especially for fourth and fifth graders, it's good to kind of get them in the habit of thinking about the phonetics of the word, the spelling of the word that they're talking about. Because even if they know the ABC, I think the ABC already in third grade, they're looking at the like uppercase letters, which they call omoji. But the even if they know like A B C D E, when they hear December or December, the spelling is not apparent whatsoever. So doing a little bit of spelling, I think, is quite important. So I do the spelling for the day. I ask the date. I also do the spelling for the date. Or the month rather. So it's December. How do you spell December? When it was November, how do you spell November? We also do the weather. So it's rainy, it's sunny, it's cloudy. Usually the three kind of main ones that we have here in Nishinomote. And I also do a spelling on that one. Cloudy is the hardest. They don't hear the L a lot sometimes. And then finally the time. 11:32 a.m. or, well, it wouldn't be p.m., but some classes I teach are in the p.m.s. But yeah, so that takes about 5 minutes, and then after the aisatsu or the warm up, we move on to kind of a pronunciation or word practice, which it's hatsuon renshu, which is pronunciation practice. This takes about 10 minutes. What I like to do for this part is kind of have laminated, or you don't need lamination, but laminated is nice. Have vocabulary cards, paste them onto the blackboard with magnets, and then kind of have students review them. So kind of like a repeat after me. I also tell students to watch my mouth just so they're able to get the pronunciation right. I found that in Japan, you don't look at I think a lot of people don't look at other people's faces when someone's talking. Like I'll notice, for example, at the morning meetings, not everyone is looking like right at. Actually, basically, no one is looking right at the face of the person who's speaking. And I think I've gotten used to it now as well. But for me, like when I first came, it's very natural for me to kind of look and make eye contact with the speaker. Whereas I don't think that's the case over here. But think about it when you're learning a language and you're trying to kind of pronounce something, especially a sound that's not in your kind of native collection of sounds. It's important to kind of understand or have an example of what kind of motor functions should I be using for the L to come out, for example. Anyway, so I do this pronunciation practice about 2 to 3 times. So if I'm doing with vegetables, I'll be like cucumber, and they repeat cucumber, cucumber. Okay, boom, move on. I think I mentioned this a little bit, but common, or at least with the L, but common sounds that are tough, at least for the kids in Japan here, are the English R. So for Japan, they have an R, but it's a more sharp R. Like ringo is apple. I think Americans would struggle with this R actually because the tongue moves farther forward than in the English R, right? So ringo, which is apple, hidari, which is left. Those R's, your tongue is moving quite far forward, versus think of an English R like road, and your tongue isn't in that front position. It's shifted a lot farther back in your mouth. You're doing like a road, not a road. Yeah, so it's that sound is hard, and then so is L. L is actually not in there's no L sound in any of the Japanese alphabets, so that one's kind of hard as well. We were recently reviewing bell, because it's Christmas and you got bells and whatnot. And usually they will, say it something like beru, the last, instead of the two L's at the end, it's a ru, which kind of sounds like it. Call that kind of katakana English. Yeah, that's kind of the phonetic alphabet. Katakana is the phonetic Japanese alphabet, and so beru is, yeah, katakana English. The time for this exercise, I said kind of 10 minutes, but it really depends on the number of vocab words and what other activities I have planned or the main teacher has planned, and also the level of familiarity that the students have. Like, is it their first time, their second time, or is it their third lesson already learning these vocab words? I think for colors or something, it's quite easy. They know those. They pick up on those fairly quickly, even if it's like their first time. But if you're doing, I was recently doing places at school, and if it's their first time, like learning school principal's office or arts and crafts room, which are kind of long terms to remember, it might take a little bit longer for the pronunciation and word practice section. The next thing that I like to do is called pointing game. It's not really a game, but I feel like calling it a game, it engages the students more. So it's good to do that. It's 5 to 10 minutes. But basically, you have all these vocab words pasted up on the blackboard. So what you're just going to do is point at a card and have the students say what that card is in English. First, you can do like a, hey, okay, repeat after me, and point, say it, and then have them repeat it after you. And if you're confident in their level, you can just say, hey, okay, I'm going to point. I just want you to say it as fast as you can. And for ones that are particularly challenging, I would say that have the entire class repeat it once or twice. So I'm going to go back to the arts and crafts room or school principal's office example, where maybe one kid would get it, but even they wouldn't be very sure about the pronunciation. So what I would do at that point is I point my finger. I only hear one voice instead of 20, and I say, okay, this is what it is: school principal's room. Okay, let's say it together. And so you kind of review the ones that are challenging there. And then once I feel confident in the student's ability to remember the words that are on the wall, you can level up the game. I like to level it up. It also, the students are more engaged as well. But what you can do to level it up is start speeding up. So first, you kind of point, have them say it, okay, next one, and then once they're comfortable, you can start pointing a little bit faster, bit by bit by bit. I think towards the end, I say, okay, we're going to go to level 3 or something. And then at the end of level 3, I'll just start pointing, so fast that even it would be challenging even for a native English speaker. And then they all just start laughing at the end. I think that's kind of a little bit of amusement value. Yeah. Next is missing game. Again, not really a game, sort of a game, but this missing game also takes about 5 to 10 minutes. I think doing the pointing game first is a good idea, just so they're familiar with all the vocab words. But now what you do is you ask the students to close their eyes. You take a couple of the about 10 to 15 vocab words that you have on board off the board, and then have students open their eyes and kind of raise their hands to guess which one is missing. And I really like this game. I think it's great. The students are always really, I thought, sometimes they wouldn't be sure, that there wouldn't be hands raised, but there's always, they're really excited to be the one to kind of guess or solve the puzzle of like which one's missing. So I always get plenty of volunteers, and it's a good way to, again, just kind of drill the vocab words that you're trying to instill. So I've done, pointing game and missing game, I've done with quite a few concepts, but just this past week, last week I think, I did missing game with places at school like gym, arts and crafts room, lunchroom, etc. But I've also done it with things like fruits and vegetables, or food as well. So you can basically do this with kind of anything. Usually for the missing game, right? So once what I like to do is say, hey, okay, raise your hand if you want to be the one to kind of guess the correct answer, right? And so one student will raise their hand, they get the right answer, and usually I'll have everyone repeat it after. So even if they guess, okay, arts and crafts room, okay, great, arts and crafts room, let's all say it one more time. This is especially important, I feel like, for the words like arts and crafts room that are a bit, that's not a word, but the concepts that are a bit longer and a little bit more confusing. Because even if that one person who really wants to volunteer knows it, they're only volunteering because they have a pretty certain grasp of what what's missing or what the concept is, whereas some other people who are not volunteering, they might have forgotten it or something like that. It's always good to just someone guesses the answer and then just, okay, let's review it with everyone. And then the missing game, you can level up quite easily as well. What I like doing is a really simple one, is just increase the number of cards that I take off the board. Instead of just taking 2 cards, I'll take 3. 3 or 4, sometimes even 5. That's a great way to increase the difficulty. And then another way that I've found that kind of makes it a little bit more challenging and more exciting for the students is I shuffle and move around the vocab words that are remaining on the board, right? Because a lot of the time what happens is you take a couple pieces off the board and what they're remembering is not really the vocab words, but kind of the places that the vocab words were. And what's missing isn't necessarily like, oh, lunchroom, but oh, the top left square or something like that. So if you take a couple out and you shuffle the ones that are left on the board, they really have to think hard about, okay, which one is actually not there out of the ones that were previously on the board. This brings me to my last game. So first we had the warm-up, then we got pronunciation practice, about the pointing game, missing game, and then this is my favorite. I love to play this game. I think it's fun for, it's a great activity because it's fun for me, so it's fun for the teacher, and it's fun for the kids as well. But I call this the Blitz game. It's about speed, so Blitz game is kind of the name that I came up with. I feel like there's probably another name for it as well. But yeah, anyway, so I recommend, if you're ever thinking of trying any of these, I feel like most teachers probably already thought of them. They're not very sophisticated games, but yeah, I like leaving lots of time for this game because, like I said, I enjoy it and I think the kids do so as well. The children here are going to have a textbook that has a bunch of little kind of flashcards or cutouts that they should have. They should have them cut out before the lesson, but they have vocabulary words they can cut out from the back of their textbook, whether that's fruits, vegetables, or kind of colors and shapes, that kind of vibe. But what I like to do is they're going to lay out one set of vocabulary words or 2 sets, depending on level. And when I say ready, you can do this with, if there's only 4 kids in the class, you could do it all at the same table, or you can do teams. If there's like 8 kids, then you can divide it and have 4 different kind of matches going on at once. But anyway, so me or the Japanese teacher will say ready. Students put their hands on top of their heads, and then one of the teachers says a vocab word, such as red triangle, kiwi fruit, or cucumber, and the first one to kind of touch or slap that kind of little cutout vocab word is the one who kind of scores a point, essentially, and takes that vocab word off the table. Once they win it, they go ahead and put it in their own little pile, and so this game goes on until there are no cards left. If there's kind of a tie or it's not obvious, who put their hand on it first, I'll have the kids do like a rock, paper, scissors, which is good because they're not doing it in Japanese of doing like the jankenpon. They're doing the, rock, paper, scissors, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that adds kind of a fun little element to it as well. And so, when it gets close to the end of the game, I like to make it a little bit more challenging for the kids by saying some vocab words that are not on the board anymore. Because let's say there's only 2 cards left, right? And everyone, it's like pink triangle and then white square. Everyone's just kind of listening for those 2, but I'll throw in like, okay, red square or something like that, just to kind of keep them on their toes. And it's always quite funny because there's about half of them, and when I do that the first time, who will kind of flinch or even like slap the table and think that they got a vocab word correct, and only to find out that I kind of tricked them. But yeah, I think that makes it quite fun, and it really engages their listening as well. And then at the end, you count up your cards. Always count them up in English. It's a good little counting exercise for them as well. Count up your cards. Winner is the one that had the most cards. And then, so this one, it's this game, I think it's quite fun. You can play multiple rounds as well. I think one thing that I like to do is, let's say there's one kid who's really kind of advanced and they're just kind of, going off and whatnot. And even if the person they're playing against knows, the vocab words, maybe they're just slower and, they just take their time to process things, which is completely fine. So I don't want to make them feel like, left out or whatnot. So what I'll do is I will say vocab words that are closer to them on the table, or vocab words that are kind of in their field of view, or one that I think they're looking at. I'm kind of fixing the game a little bit. And then also something that I've done before is when, let's say, someone gets, destroyed. We're doing pairs. There's 4 of them. One person gets destroyed, another has a overwhelming victory, and then it's like a close victory at the other board. What we can do is we can have like a team game where we have the person who, got destroyed team up with the person who had a big victory, and the 2 people that were relatively close can team up as well. And I found that kind of really evened the team match, and it was very competitive. So I think the kids love it. I find the game interesting. I always enjoy seeing who wins and who can do it the fastest. But yeah, that's the Blitz game for you. Takes about 10 to 15 minutes. It can take even longer. Honestly, I feel like you could even, this would be stretching it, but you could do even like an entire class of just Blitz game. Maybe do different like vocab words, or switch the vocab words halfway through or something. But I feel like this never gets old. It's always a hit. Yeah. In any case, that's kind of my little rundown about a class. Just to kind of recap things, start with the warm-up for about 5 minutes, move on to some pronunciation practice. It's the drill part. Pointing game, just pointing and repeating. Missing game, just hiding a couple cards and asking what's missing. And then the Blitz game that I just described. That kind of usually fills up about an entire class. I would say this is a pretty typical schedule for me, at least for 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. I think in the future I have a really fun lesson that I've been doing with middle schoolers, so I will kind of have an in-depth an in-depth podcast about that as well, just because I'm excited to share that one with you all. I think that middle school lesson is also quite fun and engaging, and is definitely a lot different compared to teaching like 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. So it's kind of another perspective. But anyway, let's move on to the current events section, where I'll be talking about ospreys. Alright, welcome to the current events section, everyone. I apologize, I think my tone at the end of the daily life section made it sound like this was going to be an upbeat and happier section, but unfortunately the reason I'm talking about Ospreys is because recently there was an Osprey accident. So there's an accident involving the U.S. Military plane, the Osprey. So the inspiration for this story is that I saw a couple of military people, U.S. military people at the local Family Mart in Nishinomote, and I was wondering, well, what are they doing here? And I saw them twice, I think, in the span of a couple of days. So, yeah, I was just curious, and I found out that what basically happened was a CV-22 Osprey crashed off the coast of Yakushima. So that's one of the islands that's located, I would say, to the southwest of Tanegashima, but it's fairly close, about 30-minute ferry ride away, so kind of right in the backyard, essentially. And so we might be wondering, what's a CV-22 Osprey? Well, Ospreys are tilt-rotor aircraft used by the U.S. military. Tilt-rotor aircraft are ones that basically can function as both helicopters. They can take off and land as a helicopter, where there's like blades that are spinning in an upright position, but they can also turn into a real plane where those rotors tilt, hence the name tilt rotor. Those rotors tilt forward and it turns into like a propeller plane that you would see. And these military aircraft were actually used extensively in Afghanistan and are currently being used as part of a deterrence strategy against China, among other things. I'm pretty sure they're probably being used all over the world, but yeah. In any case, this happened a bit ago, November 29th, 2023, about 3 p.m. Japanese Standard Time. The cause, or why, is still unknown, but apparently the aircraft was making kind of a mayday call, and someone reported that there was fire coming out of the left rotor. But investigation to the cause, well, nothing has been confirmed yet, and nothing has been ruled out. I already mentioned kind of who's involved, but the Osprey, or this Osprey, was an Osprey that was being flown and operated by U.S. military, U.S. Air Force specifically, personnel who were operating the plane. And this plane had 8 service members who were conducting a routine training exercise. I think they were flying back up to a military base in Tokyo. So the timeline goes a little bit as follows. So conditions were clear and there wasn't a bad wind on that day, November the 29th. Then, there's an emergency landing requested around 3 p.m. Soon after, the aircraft crashes off the coast of Yakushima. I think quite soon there was one crew member whose body was recovered, and more recently, on December 4th, 5 other bodies, or 5 other people were also found, and 2 bodies were recovered from the ocean. Unfortunately, as of this time, I don't believe any of the crew members were found alive. There are still 2 crew members who are unaccounted for, so I hope that they're alive somehow. But I do think that the U.S. military has transitioned from a search and rescue to, I forgot what the technical term was, but it's more of like a salvage and recover operation. So they don't have high hopes for those 2 people that are unaccounted for. Shortly after the crash, so that around November 29th, Japan asked the U.S. to investigate and also to ground its Osprey fleet. So there's 24 U.S. Ospreys in Okinawa Prefecture at the moment, so they're definitely being used frequently in Japan. However, the U.S. promptly went and ignored the demand of the Japanese government and has kept flying Ospreys, the ones that are not the CV-22 type. Other V-22 types are okay. I think MV-22 are still flying around. I think the U.S. has launched an investigation, so it is kind of complying with that part of Japan's demands, but it's still kept flying, the Ospreys, which is contrary to what the Japanese government requested. The U.S. government maintains, or I think their position is, that the Osprey has a statistically lower, quote, mishap rate than other aircraft in its arsenal. The Marine variant, or the MV-22, apparently had a 3.16 per 100,000 flight hours mishap rate, I think back in 2022, which I don't know about mishap rates extensively, but I think that was apparently under what some other aircraft had. The problem is that this isn't the first time an Osprey has crashed. So there's actually been a couple other Osprey accidents as well. In 2016, there was an Osprey accident involving an MV, and not a CV. This time it was a CV-22. In 2016, it was an MV-22 Osprey that crashed. This was operated by the Marines, and it crashed in Okinawa, injuring 2 people. And unfortunately, in Australia, in both 2017 and 2023, there were Osprey accidents that had 3 casualties each. Now, the implications of this whole kind of incident are, first off, a change of plans. So this is going to affect U.S. and Japanese strategy in the region to deter China. China has been quite aggressive in the region recently, and Ospreys were a component. I'm not sure how much of a key component they were, but they were definitely a component of Japan and the U.S.'s plans of deterring China in the area. And like I mentioned, there are 24 Ospreys in Okinawa, so having all those grounded, it's going to have to the U.S. and Japanese strategy is going to have to shift. Now, another implication of this incident is that it's going to stress Japan and U.S. relations. So Japan and the U.S. are on good terms. We are military allies, but this time the U.S. has not heeded a Japanese advisory, and this is on Japanese soil. This is in Japanese territory, right? So I don't think the Japanese government or the Japanese people feel very kindly about that. And this whole incident also strains Japan-U.S. relations because Japanese citizens themselves are scared of the craft, the Ospreys, crash landing near them. Many Ospreys that are located in Japan are in bases that are quite close to urban and civilian centers. And now, it's unfortunate that people lost their lives in this Osprey accident, but just imagine the catastrophe that could happen if an Osprey crashes not into the water, but into a high rise or something like that, for example. Let's not even talk about that. In addition, public support for the U.S. Because of this, public support for the U.S.-Japanese alliance can weaken, and there's also a kind of potential for distrust being sown among the two governments. If the U.S. isn't following Japanese government demands, Japan might start thinking twice about what kind of military concessions, or might start thinking twice about its alliance with the U.S. And finally, the bigger issue that's hanging over this is China's challenge, where, like I mentioned, there's mounting Chinese aggression in the region, and that ought to be met with unity. And now if the U.S. and Japan are not kind of on the same wavelength, that could cause problems, and the deterrence strategy could definitely weaken. In any case, that was my current events section for you all this week. I hope you all enjoyed listening. This has been something that's, I think, been the talk of the town on the island, so I want to fill you all in as well. With that being said, let's cut to the outro. I will see you in a little bit. All Alright, welcome back everyone. Before I wrap things up, it's time for your word and stat of the week. So the word of the week this week is bonenkai. Bonenkai. And this means end of year party. Now, what's kind of interesting about this word is that it's made up of 3 kanji. The last 2 are not unusual. Nen is year. Kai is kind of meeting or party. But the first one, so the bo, which is the kanji for wasureru, or to forget, is kind of interesting because it basically means that the literal sense of this word is kind of forgetting the year party, sort of. And I think you all get what that entails. Fortunately, I have a couple bonenkais, forgetting the year parties coming up, so I'm quite excited about those. Excited to close out the year with some new friends and coworkers I made along the way. Now, the stat of the week this week for y'all is 53 meters, and this is the length of a Japanese H-2A rocket. So this week, like I said, I got to visit the Space Museum, or go down to Minamitane and go to the Space Center again, and I got to see some models of some rockets that have been launched in the past, and ones that are still being used. But anyway, I thought it was an interesting stat. 53 meters is quite long. Yeah, the H-2A is a big rocket. But yeah, 53 meters is your stat of the week, and bonenkai is your word of the week. Thank you so much for listening. Please do consider subscribing. It would mean a lot if you're not subscribed already. Yeah, this was quite a long episode, but I hope you all enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun preparing and recording this one. I hope everyone has had a great week, and I hope you have a great week this week or next week. In any case, per Aspera Ad Astra. Peace and love.